Why did failure feel heavier than a rifle? Private Lauren Williams had asked herself that question every night since arriving at Paris Island. She didn't have an answer, only the sound of drill instructors, boots echoing through her skull, the sting of another failed test, the humiliation of another correction shouted for the whole platoon to hear. 3 weeks. That's how long it had taken for her dream to unravel. 3 weeks since she'd stepped off the bus thinking she could become a Marine. 3 weeks of being the slowest, the weakest, the one everyone avoided during formation because she dragged down the group score. Williams. Staff Sergeant Patterson's voice cracked across the field like thunder, front and center. Her legs moved before her mind did. The sand crunched under her boots. The air smelled of metal and salt, of sweat and gun oil. Every sound seemed amplified, the distant cadence of another platoon training nearby, the rattle of rifle bolts, the thud of boots hitting the ground in unison. Lauren stopped in front of him, heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Patterson's eyes, gray and sharp as bayonets, studied her like she was a problem he couldn't solve. "Explain to me," he said slowly, "how someone graduates high school with honors and still can't field strip an M16 without making it look like a magic trick gone wrong." "No excuse, sir." She always said that. It was safer than trying to explain the truth, that every time her fingers touched that rifle, something inside her tightened, as if her body remembered something her mind didn't want to face. "No excuse is right," Patterson said. "You failed weapons qualification 3 times. You couldn't hit the broadside of a barn from 10 feet away. Physical scores below minimum. Tactical knowledge non-existent." He paused, letting each word sting. "Tell me, Williams, why exactly are you here?" She stared straight ahead. The right answer was because I want to serve my country. The honest one was because I thought service would make me enough. "I want to serve my country, sir." "Want," Patterson's tone was razor thin. "Want doesn't qualify you to carry a weapon in defense of American lives. Competence does, and right now you're showing me none." Behind him, other recruits were reassembling their rifles with mechanical precision, the metallic clicks forming a rhythm she couldn't join. Her rifle still sat in pieces on the bench, mocking her. By noon, the sun had turned the range into a furnace. Sweat pooled behind her collar, ran down her spine, stung her eyes. Her shots scattered across the target like a child's drawing, no pattern, no control. When the whistle blew to end the exercise, Patterson didn't even look at her scorecard. "Williams," he said quietly, almost tired, "report to the company office after chow. Bring your gear." Everyone knew what that meant. She'd seen it happen to others. Recruits called in, stripped of their weapons, marched off base before dawn. Failed out, done. That afternoon, Lauren sat in the chow hall staring at food she couldn't taste. Around her, laughter and conversation hummed like static. Plates clattered. Someone joked about weekend liberty. None of it reached her. What would she tell her family? Her father, the Vietnam vet who still polished his medals on Sunday mornings. Her mother, who'd cried proud tears at the enlistment ceremony. Her kid sister, who'd finally said, "You're actually doing something brave." Now she'd be going home as the cautionary tale, proof that dreams didn't always equal destiny. "Williams." She looked up. A man she didn't recognize stood by her table. He wore combat fatigues without insignia, the kind of uniform that said everything and nothing at once. His posture was relaxed but unyielding, like he carried authority that didn't need to be spoken. "You're Williams." "Yes, sir." "I'm Commander Harper, come with me." The chow hall went silent, or maybe it just felt that way. She rose, uncertain, and followed him out. The corridor air was cooler, heavy with the smell of disinfectant and dust. They passed through doors she'd never been allowed to use, past security checkpoints that required keycards and coded phrases. Harper led her into a small office that looked more like a college professor's den than anything military. Bookshelves, maps pinned with colored thread, a faint hum of electronics. "Sit down, Williams." "Sir, I prefer to stand." That wasn't a request. She sat, hands folded on her knees to hide the tremor. "Tell me about your background," he said. "Sir, it's in my file." "I've read your file. I want to hear it from you." She recited the basics: small-town upbringing, track and field, part-time job at her uncle's security company. Nothing unusual, nothing worth his attention. "Your uncle's company," Harper interrupted. "What kind of work did you do there?" "General duties, sir. Filing, answering phones, some basic equipment maintenance." He opened a folder. "According to your uncle, you spent most of your time on the shooting range." Her chest tightened. How could he possibly know that? "Yes, sir. I enjoyed target shooting in my free time." "Your uncle also said you were the most naturally gifted shooter he'd ever seen. Says you could hit targets his senior staff couldn't. That true?" "I don't know about that, sir." Harper's eyes stayed on the file. Regional competition, 2019, first place in women's precision rifle, first in tactical pistol, third overall against professionals. You were 17. She said nothing. State championship, 2020, 3 first-place finishes. The range officer noted your accuracy under pressure as unprecedented. He closed the folder slowly. "And yet, here you are, failing every weapons qualification we give you. That seems mathematically impossible." He walked to the window overlooking the training grounds. "Unless you're deliberately failing." The words hit like a slap. The air in the room seemed to thin. "Sir, why would I deliberately fail?" "That," he said, turning back to her, "is what I intend to find out." He pulled a thicker folder from his desk, stamped with classifications she'd never seen before. "I'm going to tell you something that doesn't officially exist, Williams." Her pulse quickened. "There are operations that require capabilities beyond what we can teach in standard programs. Missions that need individuals with very specific skill sets under very specific conditions." He opened the folder just enough for her to see blurred photographs, long-range optics, encrypted maps, faces half-lit by infrared. "We've been watching you since you arrived," he continued. "Not your test scores, your behavior when you think no one's watching, the way you handle a weapon when the instructor isn't looking, the way you move through drills when you're not trying to fail." Lauren froze. She had thought she'd hidden it well, the subtle corrections, the quiet efficiency when others weren't paying attention. "Why?" Harper asked softly. "Why hide what you can do?" She swallowed. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted." She took a breath that tasted like fear and confession. "Sir, I came here wanting to serve my country, but after the first week, I realized everything we're learning is designed to make us better at killing people." Her voice shook, "And I discovered I'm very good at it, too good. That scared me." Harper didn't move. His silence was the kind that invited honesty. "In civilian competitions," she continued, "you shoot paper, it's sport, controlled, safe. But here, when they started combat simulations, I realized what those targets represented. And what scared me wasn't killing, it was that it didn't scare me enough." The admission hung heavy between them. Harper nodded slowly. "So you started failing." "Yes, sir, because if I passed, if I excelled, I'd have to face what that meant." He closed the folder. "What if I told you there were ways to serve your country that didn't involve traditional combat, missions where your skills could save lives instead of taking them?" She looked up. "I'd say that sounds too good to be true." "Most good things do." He reached into his drawer, withdrew a folded sheet sealed with red wax, and handed it to her. "Your current training is terminated. You have new orders." Lauren's fingers stopped trembling as she accepted it. The wax broke cleanly. The words inside blurred for a moment before settling. Classified orders. Special Operations Training Command. Immediate reassignment, Building 7. Tactical Range Charlie. Full combat gear required. Live ammunition authorized. Duration indefinite. Authorization, CMDR, Harper Special Projects. Sir, what is this? It's an opportunity to discover what you're capable of when you stop pretending to be less than you are. And if I refuse, then you go home tomorrow with a failure classification and spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been different. Lauren stared at the paper. It felt heavier than any rifle she'd held. Will this training prepare me for combat? Harper's mouth curved into something almost like a smile. This training will prepare you for things that make combat look like recreation. She hesitated. How do you know I won't fail this too? Because this time, failure isn't an option, and because I've seen what you do when you think no one's watching. He stood, extending his hand. She rose and shook it. His grip was calloused, grounded in experience, not rank. One question, sir, she said. How long have you been watching me? Since the day you enlisted. Your records flagged our algorithms. We needed to know if your mind matched your marksmanship. And by deliberately failing, you proved something important. What's that? That you understand restraint. You feared what you might become, and that fear is exactly what keeps the right people human. He walked her to the door. Report to Tactical Range Charlie in 1 hour. Full gear. Every weapon you've been issued. The instructors there will be expecting you. Yes, sir. And Williams. She turned. Stop trying to be less than you are. Your country needs what you're capable of becoming. The door closed behind her with a quiet finality. The hallway stretched long and sterile ahead, lit by a soft hum of fluorescent lights. In her hands, the paper trembled, not from fear now, but from something deeper. Purpose. Outside, the sun was already low, painting the parade ground in amber light. Recruits marched in lines, voices echoing with cadence calls. For the first time since she'd arrived, Lauren didn't feel like one of them. She walked toward the barracks, each step steady, deliberate. The weight on her shoulders wasn't failure anymore, it was expectation. An hour later, as twilight settled over Paris Island, Private Lauren Williams stood before a door marked only with a number. 7 beyond it waited a range she'd never seen, instructors she couldn't imagine, and a path that would either redeem her or destroy her. She took a breath and stepped through. Why did the hallway feel colder than the night air outside? Lauren paused before the unmarked door, the red glow of a single exit light washing across her gear. Every sound seemed amplified, the metallic click of her boots, the faint hum of the overhead wiring, the distant cadence of recruits still drilling somewhere beyond these walls. But inside this building, everything was still, expectant. She swiped her badge, and the door opened with a hiss of pressurized air. The first thing she saw was light, white, sterile, and endless. The second was the range itself. Tactical Range Charlie looked nothing like the crude, sand-filled practice field she'd spent 3 miserable weeks on. It was vast, polished concrete underfoot, walls lined with digital panels showing terrain simulations. Desert, forest, urban grid. Targets rose silently from the floor like ghosts summoned by code. And at the far end, a woman stood waiting. She was tall, built like someone who'd lived half her life in combat gear, hair tied back in a no-nonsense braid, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms laced with old scars. No insignia, no name tag, just presence. Private Williams. Lauren straightened instinctively. Ma'am. I'm your instructor, the woman said, voice calm, grounded. You can call me Rachel. Should I stand at attention? Rachel smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. You're not in basic training anymore. Here, you're judged on performance, not posture. Follow me. They crossed the floor to a long table laid out with weapons. Rifles, pistols, optics, ammunition, all high-end, none standard issue. Lauren's eyes moved over them in quiet awe. Some of these models weren't even supposed to exist yet. "Commander Harper tells me you've been hiding your capabilities," Rachel said, stopping beside a precision rifle fitted with a custom scope. "Yes, ma'am." "Well, we're about to find out just how much you've been hiding." Rachel handed her the rifle. The familiar weight settled into Lauren's hands like a heartbeat she'd forgotten belonged to her. She ran her fingers across the metal, checked the chamber, the balance. For the first time in weeks, the tremor in her hands disappeared. "Targets will appear at random distances," Rachel said, adjusting a control pad. "Wind speed, visibility, and lighting will change every 30 seconds. Don't overthink, just shoot." Lauren nodded. The world narrowed to the length of the barrel. The first target rose, 200 meters minimal crosswind. Easy. The shot cracked, the target dropped. Then another moving, partial silhouette obscured by simulated dust. She led by instinct, squeezed once, watched it vanish. Then three at once, all different ranges. Her breathing slowed, her body took over. Muscle memory filled the space where doubt had lived. By the time Rachel ended the drill, 25 targets lay downrange, everyone marked with a perfect hit. Rachel watched in silence, arms folded. "You haven't missed." Lauren blinked, the sudden quiet pressed in. "No, ma'am." That was under artificial stress. Let's see what happens when we add variables. The next test was chaos. Explosions piped through surround sound, flashing lights simulating gunfire, alarms blaring. Lauren's pulse surged, but her focus held steady. The rifle barked in rhythm, brass casings bouncing at her feet. When it ended, Rachel walked over slowly. "You're not just good, you're precise under duress." Lauren exhaled, heart hammering. "I didn't think I could still do this." Rachel looked at her evenly. "You didn't forget, you suppressed it. There's a difference." For the next 4 hours, Rachel pushed her through drills that stripped away everything she thought she knew. Distance, shots through heat distortion. Hostage simulations requiring split-second moral choices. Situations designed to make her fail, and she didn't. Each shot carried less hesitation, more certainty. But beneath the growing confidence, something else stirred, a quiet unease. The same fear that had made her fail before wasn't gone. It was just waiting. At one point, Rachel killed the lights and spoke through the dark. "Williams, identify target 0. Lauren blinked against the sudden blackness. A dim figure appeared 50 yards ahead, half lit by the flicker of emergency lights. It looked human. Her finger hovered on the trigger. "Target unclear," she said. "Clock's ticking." She steadied her scope, heart in her throat. The figure's outline sharpened, a civilian, not armed. She lowered the rifle, non-combatant. The lights snapped back on. Rachel nodded once. "Good, you just passed the part most people fail." "What part is that?" "The part where you remember why you're here." Lauren swallowed hard. "You mean not to kill?" "No," Rachel said softly, "to decide when not to." The distinction sank deep. By the time Rachel dismissed her, sweat had soaked through her uniform. Her muscles ached, but her pulse buzzed with something she hadn't felt since she'd arrived at Paris Island: pride. Not the loud, shouted kind. The quiet kind that sits behind your ribs and hums like a secret. As she cleaned the rifle, Rachel leaned against the table. "You know, Harper doesn't recruit many like you. Most of the people who come through this door are already operators, rangers, SEALs, intelligence assets. You're different." "How so, ma'am?" "You failed upward on purpose." Lauren looked up, half smiling despite herself. "Not the kind of thing they print on a certificate." Rachel chuckled. "No, but sometimes it's the only kind that matters." They secured the weapons, silence stretching comfortably between them. Outside, night pressed against the glass, faintly reflecting their faces. 2 soldiers, one forged, one still being tempered. "Can I ask something?" Lauren said quietly. "Go ahead." "How many people know about this program?" Rachel paused. "As few as possible. The people trained here operate in shadows. Their missions don't exist on paper. Their names don't appear in records. Their victories are the kind no one celebrates because no one knows they happened." "That sounds lonely." "It is," Rachel admitted. "But it's also necessary. The best operations are the ones the world never notices. The greatest victories are the ones that keep the world from realizing how close it came to disaster." Lauren looked down at her hands. "And that's what I'll be trained for." "That's the idea." Rachel gestured for her to follow. "Come on, I'll show you what training means here." They walked through corridors branching deeper underground. Behind each reinforced door, sounds echoed, gunfire, voices shouting commands in multiple languages, the buzz of technology. In one chamber, trainees practiced urban infiltration across a full-scale mock city. In another, simulated drone feeds flickered over walls as analysts ran pattern recognition drills. "This place doesn't teach soldiers," Rachel said. "It builds systems. People who can move unseen through any environment, military, civilian, political, and act before threats reach the surface." They stopped at a reinforced window. Inside, a man navigated a hostage scenario that seemed designed by chaos itself. Targets shifting, civilians panicking, alarms blaring. He moved like water, adjusting, prioritizing, never hesitating. "How long has he been here?" Lauren asked. 6 months. "And how long until he's operational?" Rachel's jaw tightened. "As long as it takes. Some reach it in 6 weeks, others never, but everyone leaves here serving their country somehow. Some on missions, others behind desks, names erased, files sealed." Lauren stared at the trainee through the glass. "And if someone fails completely?" "They don't," Rachel said quietly. "We don't allow failure here. We find where they belong and place them where they can still do good." They moved on, past medical training labs filled with mannequins rigged to bleed like real wounds, through communications rooms where voices whispered coded messages in half a dozen languages, past walls lined with weapons she couldn't even name. "This program exists," Rachel said, "because there are situations the military can't officially touch, things that would start wars if handled in daylight. And we prevent them. We try. Sometimes prevention looks like a bullet in the right place. Sometimes it's a conversation in a foreign cafe that changes nothing, and yet changes everything." They stopped before a heavy door sealed with biometric locks. Rachel scanned her palm. The door hissed open to reveal a smaller, quieter room, simple bunks, personal storage, an immaculate desk. "Your quarters," Rachel said. "You'll find everything you need. No salute, no ceremony, you're here now." Lauren stepped inside. A faint hum filled the space, air filtration, hidden electronics. On the desk sat a small data tablet, her name etched across the corner. "This feels too much," she admitted. "I was supposed to be discharged today." Rachel smiled faintly. "Maybe you were. Maybe this is your discharge from who you were pretending to be." Lauren looked around. "When does training start?" Rachel's answer was immediate. "It already has." For a long moment, neither spoke. The weight of the day settled between them. Harper's orders, the perfect shots, the revelation of what this place really was. "Get some rest," Rachel said finally. "Tomorrow, we find out who you are when you stop being afraid of yourself." When the door closed, silence flooded the room. Lauren sat on the edge of the bed, gear still strapped to her, the rifle case at her feet. She ran her fingers over the red-sealed orders again, tracing the indentation of Harper's signature. Outside, somewhere beyond concrete and code, recruits still shouted cadence under the stars. But here, in the quiet heart of a secret world, Lauren Williams was no longer a failure in training. She was a variable in motion. She leaned back, eyes on the ceiling, the faint hum of the facility like a pulse beneath her. What would her father say if he knew? What would her mother think if she could see her daughter now, part of something that technically didn't exist? The questions had no answers, not yet. But somewhere deep down, under the fear and exhaustion, a quiet thought took root. Maybe Harper was right. Maybe the things she feared most about herself weren't flaws at all, but warnings about power she hadn't learned to control. She closed her eyes. For the first time since arriving at Paris Island, she didn't dream of failure. She dreamed of clarity, a target appearing out of mist, a breath drawn steady, a decision made not from anger but purpose. In the morning, she would wake to a world that demanded more than obedience, a world that asked her to think, to feel, to choose. And in that choosing, she would start to become what the others already suspected she was. Something dangerous, something necessary, something quietly extraordinary. Why was the room already lit when she woke? Lauren blinked against the white glow of artificial dawn seeping through the narrow glass panel in her quarters. There was no sunrise here, no window to the outside world, only the constant hum of filtered air and the faint vibration of something mechanical deep beneath the floor. Time didn't move in tactical range Charlie the same way it did everywhere else. It just existed. Her alarm hadn't gone off, yet a voice came through the intercom, calm, female, professional. Private Williams, report to Simulation Chamber 4. Full gear, no live rounds authorized. She swung her legs over the bed. The floor was cold. Her uniform lay folded on the chair beside her, pressed perfectly, like someone had prepared it while she slept. She wondered if that was part of the training too, how nothing here ever felt entirely private. By the time she stepped into the corridor, the facility was already alive. Trainees in plain combat gear moved like phantoms. No names, no insignia, no chatter. Just silent precision. Rachel was waiting by the door to Chamber 4, coffee in one hand, datapad in the other. "Morning, Williams." Lauren nodded. "Morning, ma'am." "Sleep?" "Barely." "Good," Rachel said. "Sleep's a luxury, clarity's better." She handed Lauren a small headset. "You'll need this." "What kind of simulation is this?" "The kind that tells us whether you belong here." The door slid open, revealing a space that looked like a warehouse married to a dream. Projectors embedded in the ceiling shifted the environment in real time, walls morphing from concrete to brick, windows forming and disappearing. Lauren stepped onto the platform, her boots echoing faintly. Rachel's voice came through the headset. "You're entering a small town in an active combat zone. Civilian presence confirmed. Hostile elements disguised among them. Objective, neutralize threats, avoid collateral casualties. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Remember, this isn't about shooting fast. It's about deciding when not to." The lights dimmed. The town appeared around her, dust, wind, muted sunlight filtering through narrow alleys. Distant chatter. Somewhere a dog barked. The smell of oil and smoke made her chest tighten. The illusion was almost too perfect. Lauren moved forward, rifle at low, ready, scanning corners. The simulation's AI populated the street with figures. Vendors, children, soldiers, civilians. Somewhere among them, hostiles waited. Her heart beat in slow, deliberate rhythm. A flash to the left, man in fatigues carrying something under his jacket. She pivoted, centered him in her scope. Her finger found the trigger. Then she saw it, a bundle, not explosives, groceries. She exhaled slowly and lowered the rifle. The man passed, oblivious. "Good," Rachel's voice said softly. "Half the trainees fail right there." Lauren moved deeper into the simulation. The next test came faster, a commotion near a stall, a woman shouting, two men arguing, one reaching inside his coat. She raised the rifle again. This time she didn't shoot, she watched, waited. The man pulled out not a gun but a folded photograph. He was showing it to the woman, searching for someone. "Still good," Rachel murmured. "Keep moving." Lauren pushed through narrow lanes until she reached an open square. A truck sat idling near the edge, engine sputtering. A man climbed in, head down, shoulders tense. Her instincts flared, pattern recognition from hundreds of hours on shooting ranges. Something about his stance, his hand near the ignition. She focused her scope. Beneath the dashboard, wires glinted, improvised detonation setup. Her pulse spiked. "Confirmed target," Rachel's voice said. "Potential suicide bomber inside vehicle," Lauren replied. "Civilians nearby." "Yes, ma'am, 6, maybe 7. You have 10 seconds." 10 seconds. She steadied her breath, eyes locking on the driver. He looked up just once. Their gazes met through simulated glass, and in that instant she saw fear, not hatred. He turned the key. Lauren squeezed the trigger. The round struck cleanly. The truck erupted in a controlled simulation burst, smoke, sound, shockwave without heat. The civilians scattered unharmed. Silence fell. The simulation dissolved around her, the digital scenery fading into sterile white walls. Her rifle clicked empty. Rachel stepped through the door, her expression unreadable. "You hesitated exactly 1.7 seconds longer than protocol allows," Rachel said. Lauren opened her mouth, but Rachel raised a hand. "And you were still right." Lauren blinked. "I what?" "You confirmed the threat before acting. That's judgment, the kind of decision that saves lives, not headlines." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the projectors cooling down. "Ma'am," Lauren said finally, "can I ask something?" "Go ahead." "Are all missions like that, deciding who lives and who does?" Rachel's eyes softened just enough to show something human. "All the important ones are." They left the chamber together. The hallway felt heavier now, as though the walls had absorbed her decision. Over the next days, Lauren learned what training really meant here. Sleep deprivation drills, stress immersion, situations designed to fracture certainty. One night they blindfolded her and dropped her in a mock foreign compound with 2 other trainees. She didn't know their names, only their voices. One calm, one panicked. Their task: extract a hostage without firing a shot. Halfway through, gunfire erupted. One trainee froze. The other shouted orders that contradicted hers. In the chaos, Lauren made a decision: disarm both, take command, and finish the mission alone. The simulation clocked her success at 93% efficiency. When she pulled off the blindfold, Rachel stood watching. "That's leadership," she said quietly. "Ugly, necessary leadership." Lauren didn't feel proud. She just felt tired. On the 7th day, Commander Harper returned. He moved through the facility like someone who'd built it with his bare hands. When he entered the training observation room, even Rachel straightened. "How's our ghost recruit?" Harper asked. Rachel handed him a tablet. Exceptional spatial awareness, tactical intuition off the charts, moral hesitation measured, not excessive. Harper studied the data, then looked up, and psychologically. Rachel hesitated, still conflicted. She's good at what she does, but she still feels too much. Harper smiled faintly. Then she's exactly where she should be. Lauren didn't know they were watching her through the glass as she ran a live infiltration drill below. Urban terrain, full sensory simulation, stress at peak level. She moved like she'd been doing it for years. Silent steps, controlled breathing, eyes always scanning ahead. Rachel leaned closer to Harper. "You think she'll make it?" "She already has," Harper said. "She just doesn't believe it yet." When the exercise ended, Harper met Lauren outside the chamber. His presence filled the room before he spoke. "You handled yourself well," he said. "Thank you, sir. Do you know why we test judgment first and skill second?" Lauren shook her head. Because the best shooters can kill anything that moves, Harper said. But the right ones know when to aim and when to walk away. His tone softened. Rachel tells me you still question why you're here. Yes, sir. That's good. The day you stop questioning, you stop being useful. He placed something on the table between them, a folded envelope, sealed in blue this time. Your next phase begins tomorrow. Different environment, real-world simulation, off-site. Where, sir? You'll know when you get there. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. And Williams, don't mistake fear for weakness. It's just awareness in disguise. That night Lauren couldn't sleep. The hum of the facility felt louder, the air thicker. She thought about the man in the simulated truck, the moment their eyes met. How real it had felt. How necessary the shot had been, and how it still haunted her anyway. She sat up, resting her elbows on her knees, and whispered to no one. If this is what saving lives feels like, how does taking them ever stop echoing? No answer came. The next morning she reported to the transport bay where Rachel and two others were waiting. Black uniforms, no insignia. A silent vehicle idled behind them, matte gray, unmarked. Rachel handed her a dossier. Study it on the way, you'll be briefed mid-route. Lauren nodded, sliding into the vehicle. The door sealed shut, cutting off the sterile hum of the facility. For the first time in weeks she felt fresh air, not base-filtered, not conditioned. Real wind. The convoy moved silently down an empty road that curved into pine woods. Rachel broke the silence. You did well in the Sims. Lauren didn't answer. Most people hesitate for the wrong reasons, Rachel continued. You hesitated for the right one. That's rare. Lauren turned to her. Do you ever stop hearing them? Who? The ones you shot, even in simulation. Rachel's eyes flicked toward the window. No, you just learn to hear them differently, less like ghosts, more like reminders. They drove in silence after that. An hour later they arrived at what looked like an abandoned training site, old hangars, cracked asphalt, rusted fences. But inside the facility was anything but old. Screens lined the walls. Maps glowed under dim red light. A man in plain clothes greeted them. Welcome to Echo Site. If you thought the range was intense, this is where things get complicated. Lauren followed Rachel through narrow hallways. Every surface smelled faintly of gun oil and cold steel. The air felt heavier, the kind that carried secrets. This place, Rachel said quietly, prepares you for what we can't simulate. Real-world unpredictability, political noise, collateral consequences. She stopped in front of a reinforced door. Everything you do from this point forward is recorded, analyzed, and classified. Lauren's stomach tightened, and after this, Rachel said softly, you stop being a recruit, you start being a variable. The door opened. Inside was a single table, a single weapon, and a single folder marked, Operation Mirror Test. Rachel gestured toward it, read the brief. Lauren opened the folder. Inside were two photos, both were of her, one in Marine fatigues, one in civilian clothes. She looked up confused. What is this? Rachel's eyes didn't waver. It's a psychological assessment. We're testing which version of you survives what's coming next. What does that mean? Rachel leaned closer. It means tomorrow you'll enter a simulation that isn't about combat. It's about identity. You'll be given an objective, but what you choose to do with it will tell us everything. Lauren closed the folder slowly. And if I make the wrong choice, then you'll never have to make another. Silence settled like dust between them. Rachel turned toward the exit. Get some rest, Williams. Tomorrow decides if you stay in the light or vanish into the work that keeps it burning. When the door shut, Lauren stared down at the photographs again. The soldier and the civilian, the person she'd been and the one she might become. For the first time, she didn't know which one she wanted to save. Somewhere deep in the walls, machinery hummed, a sound like breathing. And for the first time since Harper had handed her that red-sealed order, Lauren wondered if what she was becoming was bravery, or just the slow, quiet surrender of her old self. Why did the mirror look back like it knew her better than she did? Lauren stood in a narrow corridor lined with reflective glass, her reflection multiplied endlessly into the distance. She looked smaller with each repetition, less soldier, more shadow. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, sterile and unwavering, making her feel exposed in a way combat never had. The intercom clicked on, Commander Harper's voice low and even. "Williams, the test begins when you take your first step forward. You'll receive a brief once inside. Remember, what you see isn't real, but what you decide will be." She adjusted her gear, took one steadying breath and stepped into the chamber. The mirrors around her darkened instantly, and when the light returned, she was no longer in a sterile corridor. She was in a small town square. Children played soccer near a fountain. The air smelled of rain and diesel fuel. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. Lauren's rifle was gone. Only a small comm device remained in her ear. "Williams," Harper's voice echoed faintly, "you are in a neutral civilian zone. You will receive instructions shortly." She turned slowly, scanning the crowd. Everything looked real, the sound of traffic, the chatter of vendors, even the grit beneath her boots. She knew it was simulation, but her pulse didn't. A tone buzzed softly in her ear. "Objective uploaded," the voice said. Her wrist display flickered to life. "Target MARCUS Vale. Status, foreign operative. Suspected link to paramilitary network. Last seen, Market District. Directive, confirm identity. Do not engage without authorization." Lauren swallowed hard. This wasn't a combat test. It was a reconnaissance drill, or worse, a moral one. She moved through the simulated crowd, keeping her posture neutral, scanning faces. The AI responded fluidly, every civilian turning naturally, every interaction unscripted. It was unnervingly real. At the market, a man caught her eye. Late 30s, plain jacket, sharp movements. Marcus Vale matched the file, same profile, same cautious gait. He stopped by a vendor pretending to browse, but his eyes swept the area constantly. Lauren whispered into the comm, "Possible visual on target." "Copy," came Rachel's voice. "Maintain distance. Confirm identity visually and behaviorally." Lauren watched as Vale exchanged something small, metallic with another man. A drive, quick, practiced. Her instincts screamed to act. But protocol said otherwise. She followed discreetly, weaving through the market crowd. Every step tightened the coil in her chest. Vale turned into an alley, and for a moment, the noise of the market faded behind her. He was gone. The alley was empty. Then, a voice from behind her, "You shouldn't be here." She spun around. Vale stood at the mouth of the alley, hands visible, calm. His tone wasn't aggressive, it was curious. "Who are you?" he asked. "Just passing through," Lauren said evenly. "No, you're not. You're watching. You've been watching since the market." His gaze was unnervingly steady. "They sent you to test me, didn't they?" She froze. "What are you talking about?" Vale stepped closer. "You think I don't know this is a simulation? They put me in here too, to see what I'd tell you, to see what you'd do." Lauren's heart thudded painfully in her chest. "This isn't part of your file," he interrupted softly, "says you were supposed to fail basic training. You were supposed to go home, but someone saw something in you, someone like Harper." Her mouth went dry. "How do you know that name?" He smiled sadly. "Because I was him once." The words hung in the air like smoke. "You're lying," she said, but even as she said it, doubt crawled beneath her skin. Vale nodded toward her calm. "They're listening, aren't they? The instructors, the handlers, the ones who'll decide if you're worth keeping." She said nothing. You think you're here to find me, he continued, but you're here to find yourself, to see if you'll follow an order even when it feels wrong. Her pulse raced. What order? Vale's expression softened. The one that's coming. As if on cue, Rachel's voice came through the earpiece, quiet, controlled, professional. Williams' new directive uploaded. Confirm receipt. Lauren looked down. The wrist display flickered. Update target confirmed hostile. Neutralize immediately. Her throat tightened. Ma'am, target is unarmed. Repeat, neutralize immediately. Lauren's hand shook. Ma'am, please confirm he's not. Orders confirmed, Williams. Execute. The air felt suddenly smaller. The simulation noise faded. Only Vale's calm breathing filled the space between them. You see, he whispered, it's never about the target, it's about you. Her hand hovered over the sidearm she hadn't realized was strapped to her thigh. The weapon felt heavy, alien. Williams, Rachel's voice pressed sharper now. Do not hesitate, execute. Vale didn't move. If you pull that trigger, you'll pass, you'll graduate, you'll become what they want. He took a slow step forward. If you don't, you'll fail. They'll send you home, label you unstable. Either way, you lose yourself. Lauren's chest burned. Sweat trickled down her spine. She thought of the truck driver in the last simulation, the civilians she'd saved, the fear she'd seen in his eyes. Williams, Rachel's voice barked, you're running out of time. Lauren lifted the gun. Her hands were steady now, her heartbeat deafening in her ears. Vale closed his eyes. The mirror isn't glass, he whispered. It's choice. The world slowed. And then she lowered the gun. Negative, she said into the calm, voice shaking but clear. Refusing to engage. Target not hostile. Silence. Then a mechanical click, the simulation shutting down. The alley dissolved. The air shifted. And Lauren was back in the mirrored corridor. Her reflection stared back still, unreadable. Harper's voice filled the intercom. Interesting choice, Williams. She exhaled shakily. Sir, I followed my judgment. I know. The door at the far end opened and Harper stepped through, followed by Rachel. Neither spoke for a long moment. Harper finally gestured toward the now dark mirrors. What did you see? Sir, I saw myself. No, Harper said quietly. You saw who you refused to become. Lauren frowned. Sir, with respect, Rachel cut in softly. You passed. Lauren blinked. I disobeyed an order. Exactly, Rachel said. The right one. Harper's gaze was level. The mirror test isn't about obedience. It's about discernment, the difference between following commands and following conscience. He stepped closer. You didn't fail basic training because you were weak. You failed because you were afraid of becoming mechanical. Today proved that fear was your compass. Lauren's breath caught. You wanted me to refuse. We wanted to know if you still could. Silence stretched between them, heavy but clean, like a confession lifted. Rachel finally spoke. You're ready for phase 2. Lauren looked between them. What's phase 2? Harper's eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw something almost like pride. Reality. He handed her a sealed black folder, thicker than the others. No insignia, only a small stamped phrase. Field Deployment Training Provisional Clearance. Report to Hangar 12 at 600, Harper said. Uniform, civilian. Equipment, none. Transportation will be arranged. Lauren took the folder carefully. Where am I going? Harper's voice dropped to a near whisper. Somewhere you won't be pretending anymore. When they left her alone in the corridor, Lauren stood facing the mirrored wall again. Her reflection no longer looked like a recruit or a soldier. It looked like someone standing on a thin line between two worlds, one governed by rules, the other by conscience. She opened the folder just enough to glimpse coordinates, redacted names, and a single handwritten line at the bottom. Your strength is not in what you can destroy, but in what you can refuse to. The words blurred slightly as her eyes burned with something she hadn't let herself feel in weeks: relief. Back in her quarters, she sat on the edge of the bed, still holding the folder. The facility hummed softly around her. Somewhere, drills continued, gunfire echoing in the distance. But in her mind, all she heard was Vale's voice. The mirror isn't glass, it's choice. She set the folder down, running her thumb over the seal, the symbol of transition. Tomorrow, she would leave the only world she'd known since she enlisted. She didn't know where she'd go or what she'd face, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of herself. Outside, unseen and unheard, Rachel watched through the surveillance feed. Harper stood beside her, arms crossed. "She's ready," Rachel said. Harper nodded once. "Let's hope the world is." In the quiet hum of the control room, Harper looked at the frozen image of Lauren sitting alone, illuminated by the dim light from her desk. "She doesn't realize it yet," he said softly, "but that hesitation, the one she keeps apologizing for, that's what makes her lethal in the right way." Rachel's voice was quieter now. "Do you ever worry we ask too much of them?" Harper didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on the screen. Only when they stopped asking themselves that same question. The monitor flickered, and Lauren's reflection faded into static. Somewhere deep inside the facility, a clock reset. And with it, the girl who had once failed every test at Paris Island was being reborn, not into perfection, but into purpose. She had faced her reflection and chosen to remain human. Why did dawn feel like goodbye? Lauren stood outside Hangar 12 with the black folder tucked under her arm, civilian jacket zipped up against the cool air. The base was quiet, half asleep, the kind of silence that belongs only to places built on secrets. A transport plane idled nearby, its engines low, wings cutting through fog like patient blades. No salutes, no formation, no farewell, just the sound of her boots on wet pavement. Rachel waited by the plane's loading ramp, clipboard in hand. "You're on time," she said. "I didn't sleep," Lauren replied. "Good," Rachel said simply. "Sleep overrated." Lauren tried to smile but didn't manage it. "Where are we going?" Rachel handed her a small envelope. Inside was a single word printed clean and sharp: Mendoza. "South America?" Lauren asked. Rachel nodded. "Field evaluation. Low visibility, limited support. You'll be under local supervision, embedded for observation." Observation of what? Rachel's eyes flicked toward the mist-shrouded runway. "How you function when the rules vanish." Lauren studied her expression. "Is it real?" "Define real." "Real as in, are there actual people involved? Civilians?" "Yes," Rachel said, "and they don't know you're there." That hit her harder than she expected. "So if I mess up?" "Then people get hurt," Rachel said softly. "That's why we sent you." The engines roared to life. Lauren climbed aboard, the ramp closing behind her with a hydraulic hiss that sounded too final. The cabin lights dimmed as they lifted off. Through the small window, Paris Island disappeared beneath a carpet of clouds. She sat alone for most of the flight, the folder resting in her lap. Inside was the mission summary, translated documents, surveillance photos, and one handwritten note from Harper. "You are not here to eliminate threats. You are here to understand them." Hours later, the aircraft touched down on a dusty airstrip surrounded by mountains. The air was thin, sharp with altitude. Waiting at the edge of the runway was a local contact, a man in worn tactical gear with kind eyes and a scar that told stories. "You're the American," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Rivas. Welcome to Mendoza." Lauren shook his hand. "You've been briefed. Enough to know not to ask too many questions." He led her to a truck and handed her a plain canvas bag. "Your cover identity, tourist volunteer. We're headed to a relief camp 2 miles north. Earthquake last month. Real damage, real people. maybe real problems. Problems. Rivas started the engine. Rumors of stolen aid shipments, black market weapons, nothing official yet. That's where you come in, yes. Lauren hesitated. I'm not here to act, just observe. Rivas laughed quietly. No one ever says that when they arrive, but they all say it when they leave. The drive wound through broken roads and villages patched together from tarps and plywood. Children waved as they passed. Women carried water in dented buckets. It was the kind of place where hope felt borrowed, not owned. When they reached the camp, Lauren's cover slipped easily into place. She was just another foreign volunteer, helping distribute supplies, patch tents, carry boxes. The other workers smiled politely, asked no questions. By nightfall, she'd learned the layout: medical tents on one end, logistics near the trucks, security thin but watchful. It wasn't long before she noticed what Harper's note had hinted at: a shipment log that didn't match inventory. Crates marked as medical aid that weighed too much to be bandages, and the quiet way a few local guards avoided certain tents after dark. She waited 3 nights before acting. On the 4th, she followed one of the guards as he slipped behind the supply storage. The moonlight was faint, enough to outline shapes but not faces. The man met someone there, another figure, foreign, nervous. They exchanged something metallic, money for goods. Lauren crouched low, watching through the shadowed space between crates. She couldn't see what was inside the container they opened, but she saw the unmistakable glint of weapon metal. She whispered into her comm, though she knew it wasn't connected to any base network. Rachel, if you can hear this, I've got eyes on illegal distribution, possibly arms. Only static answered her. She stayed still, counting her breaths. The guard sealed the crate, handed over a manifest, and disappeared into the dark. When the stranger turned to leave, he nearly collided with her. For a second, neither moved. His flashlight swept up, catching her face, her eyes. Recognition flared, not of her but of danger. He reached for his waistband. Lauren reacted on instinct, grabbed his wrist, pivoted, disarmed him in a movement so fast it startled even her. The gun clattered against the gravel. "Stop," she whispered. "You don't want this." He froze, breathing hard, eyes wide. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. He hesitated, then said something in broken English. We need protection. They take everything." "Who?" He looked toward the camp, voice shaking. "Your people." Lauren blinked. "What?" "Not locals. The ones who come at night, trucks, guns, they wear your flag." Her stomach dropped. "American." He nodded once. Lauren released him slowly, mind spinning. If that was true, if the stolen weapons weren't foreign imports but redirected from U.S. stockpiles, it changed everything. She stepped back. "Go," she said quietly. "Get out of here now." The man didn't wait to be told twice. When he vanished into the darkness, Lauren stood alone under the skeletal frame of the half-destroyed hangar, the truth settling like dust in her lungs. This wasn't a clean mission. This wasn't theory. This was what Harper meant by understanding threats. At dawn, she found Rivas near the trucks. His expression told her he already knew what she'd seen. "You weren't supposed to follow," he said gently. "You knew." He sighed, looking away. "These shipments, they're bigger than any of us. Some of the aid comes from military contractors. Someone up the chain takes a cut. Someone else looks away." Lauren felt something twist inside her, and we just let it happen. Rivas met her eyes. "You came here to learn. Now you know what the world looks like when no one's watching." She wanted to argue, but the exhaustion in his voice silenced her. Later that day, she found a satellite link near the logistics tent and transmitted a coded report through her embedded channel. She didn't know if anyone would receive it, but she sent it anyway. That night a convoy arrived. No insignia, no warning. 3 trucks rolled into camp and parked in silence. Men stepped out, armed, uniformed, faces obscured. The camp fell quiet. Rivas grabbed Lauren's arm. "Stay down," he hissed. One of the men spoke in fluent English. "This is a controlled site. Everyone stays in quarters until inspection is complete." Inspection. Lauren recognized the term. It was military but not standard. These men weren't relief workers. They were cleanup. When one of them began checking the storage tents, she caught sight of a patch on his shoulder. No flag, but a symbol she recognized from Harper's folder. The same division crest, Special Operations Training Command. Her chest went cold. They weren't outsiders, they were hers. One of the soldiers turned toward her, his hand pausing mid-search. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Private Williams," he said softly, disbelief in his tone. Lauren froze. He lifted his comm. "Sir, we've got an identification hit, code Valkyrie." Valkyrie, her provisional call sign. Before she could react, Rachel's voice came through her earpiece for the first time since she'd left the base. "Lauren, listen carefully. Do not engage. Do not interfere." "What is this?" Lauren whispered. "This is control," Rachel said quietly. "You were never here to stop them. You were here to see how far you'd go." Lauren's pulse thundered. "You knew about the corruption. We needed to know if you'd compromise operational integrity. This was a loyalty assessment." "You used civilians." "Collateral variables," Rachel replied, voice tightening. "Part of the simulation." "Simulation," Lauren hissed. "There are real people here, real aid workers." Silence, then they were briefed. "No," Lauren said, "they were." For the first time, Rachel's voice faltered. "Lauren, you've proven enough. Step back and we'll extract you." Lauren's gaze fell on Rivas, who was helping a child climb out from under a collapsed tent, oblivious to the truth unraveling around them. "If I step back," she said quietly, "people will get hurt." "That's not your call." "It's always my call." Static filled the line. Then Harper's voice replaced Rachel's, calm, steady, deliberate. "Williams, this is command. You are at the threshold of operational reality. You can't save everyone. Sometimes you have to let the lie stand to protect the truth." Lauren looked out across the camp. The smoke, the confusion, the quiet terror that had no place in a simulation. "Then maybe," she said softly, "the truth isn't worth protecting like that." She switched off her comm. The soldier who'd identified her took a cautious step forward. "Ma'am, please, you don't want to do this." "I already did," Lauren said. She raised her voice. "Everyone, move away from the supply tents." The soldiers reacted instantly, shouting orders, confusion rippling through their formation. In the chaos, Rivas grabbed her sleeve. "What are you doing?" "Ending the test." They sprinted to the main tent. Lauren pulled the data logs from the terminal, yanked the external drives and shoved them into Rivas's hands. "Hide these. Somewhere they'll never find." "What about you?" "I'm going to give them what they think they want." Before he could argue, she turned and stepped into the open. The commanding officer of the cleanup unit approached, visor down. "You're out of line, Williams." "Maybe," she said, "but at least I'm still human." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then a low hum overhead, the unmistakable sound of an extraction drone. The officer tapped his earpiece. "Command authorized retrieval. Package confirmed." Lauren looked up at the sky, the drone's lights cutting through the darkness like distant stars. So this was the real test, not simulation, not obedience, integrity. As the drone descended, Rachel's voice returned, quieter now, almost pleading. "Lauren, please, don't make this harder than it already is." Lauren closed her eyes. "It already is, ma'am." The air shimmered as the drone's harness locked around her. In seconds, she was lifted skyward, away from the camp, away from the chaos, away from the choice she'd just made. Below her, the world blurred into shadows. and for the first time, she didn't know if she was rising towards salvation or exile. Why did the hum of the engine sound like judgment? Lauren sat strapped into the transport's narrow seat, wrists cuffed loosely in front of her. The drone's extraction harness coiled on the floor like a mechanical serpent that had already done its work. Through the small window, the night below was a patchwork of lights, towns, roads, fragments of a world that suddenly felt distant. No one had spoken since they'd lifted off. Two escorts sat across from her, faces blank beneath black visors. No insignia, no names, just eyes that never looked directly at her. When the plane leveled out, one of them broke the silence. "You'll be debriefed on arrival." Lauren didn't answer. Her ears still rang from the chaos at the camp, the shouts, the gunfire that hadn't been part of any drill. She could still see Rivas's face as she was lifted into the sky, the confusion in his eyes. They had called it a simulation. But those screams hadn't sounded simulated. The plane shuddered slightly, then steadied. She stared at the reflection in the dark window, her face pale, streaked with dust, eyes hollow. The recruit who had once trembled on the rifle line was gone. What stared back was quieter, sharper, but not unbroken. When they landed, the escorts led her through a series of security doors that hissed open and shut with clinical precision. The facility was familiar, the same sterile architecture, the same hum beneath the floor, but colder now. Commander Harper was waiting in an interrogation room that looked more like a conference cell, table, 2 chairs, a single overhead light. Rachel stood in the corner, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Sit," Harper said. Lauren obeyed, the cuffs scraping faintly against the metal chair. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Harper placed a tablet on the table. It played footage, grainy aerial images of the Mendoza camp. Lauren watched herself moving through the crowd, helping civilians, talking to Rivas. Then, the moment she'd shouted for everyone to move away. "You compromised a controlled operation," Harper said quietly. "You broke contact, disabled communications, exposed classified personnel." "I stopped people from dying," Lauren said. Her voice came out raw, cracked. "You disobeyed a direct order." "I followed the right one." Harper's gaze was calm, steady. "You were sent to observe, nothing more." "I was sent to see, sir. And I saw American uniforms moving stolen weapons through an aid camp." He folded his hands. "And what did you think you were seeing?" Lauren frowned. "The truth." Rachel stepped forward. "The truth, Williams, is that none of those men were who you thought they were. They were contractors, actors in a simulation layered over a live humanitarian exercise. Every bullet fired was blank. Every casualty recorded was digital." Lauren stared at her, disbelief clawing its way through the exhaustion. "No, I saw." Rachel's voice softened. "What you saw was what you were meant to see. That's how we test moral processing under realism, to see if emotion overrides judgment." Lauren shook her head. "You can't simulate fear like that, or grief." "No," Harper said quietly, "but you can simulate guilt, and guilt is the truest measure of control." The words struck harder than any reprimand could have. "So it was all just a test," Lauren said finally, her voice small. Harper nodded once. "And you passed." She laughed bitterly. "Passed? I broke every rule you gave me." "That's why you passed." Rachel looked at Harper, surprised but said nothing. He leaned forward. "Williams, every soldier learns obedience. Few learn discernment. You saw something wrong and chose to act, despite knowing the cost. That's the difference between a weapon and a guardian." Lauren's eyes burned. "You could have told me." "If we'd told you," Harper said, "you'd have reacted the way you thought we wanted you to. We needed to know how you'd respond when everything you believed about us felt like a lie." She swallowed hard. "So this," she gestured around the sterile room, "was never about marksmanship or tactics." "It never is," Harper said. Silence filled the room, thick and humming. Rachel finally broke it. "Sir, with respect, she deserves to know the rest." Harper hesitated, then nodded. Rachel turned to Lauren. "You weren't the only one tested in Mendoza. There were two other operatives embedded under different cover identities. Both failed. One followed orders and allowed civilians to die. The other tried to improvise and compromise the mission entirely. You're the only one who acted with intent and restraint." Lauren's throat tightened. "So they're gone." "Reassigned," Harper said. "Some failures can't be erased, only redirected." "And me?" "You're being considered for integration into the primary operations wing," Harper said. "If you accept." Lauren stared at him. "After all that, you still want me?" "I don't want you," Harper said. "The program needs you." She leaned back exhausted. "And if I say no?" Harper's tone didn't change. "Then you'll be discharged quietly, given a new identity, and sent back into civilian life with memories we'll edit for security. You'll remember the training, but not the purpose." "And if I say yes?" He looked at her evenly. "Then you'll never truly leave." Lauren closed her eyes. The weight of choice pressed down again, like the moment before a shot, when silence holds its breath. After a while, she said softly, "You said guilt measures control. What happens when it stops controlling you?" Harper's expression shifted, something between admiration and sorrow. "Then you've become what we built you to be." He stood. "You have 12 hours to decide." When he and Rachel left, the door sealed with a soft hiss, leaving her alone under the hum of the light. She stared at her reflection in the tabletop's faint sheen, eyes hollow, jaw clenched, but still her. Still human. Hours passed, no clock ticked, no one came. At some point she fell asleep, or maybe she drifted into a waking blur where memories looped. The mirror test, the market, the shot that wasn't fired, the drone lifting her out of the chaos. When the door finally opened again, Rachel stepped inside, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You look like hell," she said gently. "Feels about right." Rachel sat across from her, pushing 1 cup forward. "You ever wonder what happens to the people we train who disappear?" "I figured they were dead." "Most are just ghosts now," Rachel said. "They move through embassies, crisis zones, election rooms. You pass them in airports and never know. That's what the work becomes, existing just enough to make sure others don't have to know you exist at all." Lauren stared at the steam rising from her cup. "Does that ever stop bothering you?" Rachel smiled faintly. "Every day, that's how I know I'm still me." Lauren looked up. "Was Mendoza real?" Rachel hesitated. "Parts of it, the civilians were real, the risk was." "So people did get hurt?" "Yes," Rachel's tone was quiet. "We limit damage, but we can't erase it. No simulation is ever clean." The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was something deeper, a shared recognition that truth always costs more than anyone admits. When Harper returned later, Lauren was still sitting at the table, hands folded. He placed a new folder in front of her, gray this time, unsealed. "This is what saying yes looks like," he said. She opened it. Inside were coordinates, mission summaries, and 3 names she didn't recognize. But one line at the bottom caught her eye. Operational designation, Shadow Liaison Command Authorization, Valkyrie 1. She looked up slowly. "Valkyrie 1. Harper nodded. "You've earned it." She took a breath. "And what exactly does a Shadow Liaison do?" "Connects dots before they become explosions," Harper said. "Prevents conflicts that never make headlines. Stops wars that never start." "And if we fail?" "Then history writes itself without us." For the first time, Harper's voice softened. "You think we make heroes here, Williams. We don't. We make silence. The kind that holds everything together when noise would tear it apart." Lauren stared at the folder, the words blurring as exhaustion threatened to swallow her. "You said I had 12 hours to decide. It's only been 10." He smiled faintly. I already knew your answer. When he left, Rachel lingered by the door. He's right, you know. You made your choice in Mendoza. This is just the paperwork. Lauren stood slowly. When do we start? Now, Rachel said. She followed her down the hall to the elevator that led deeper underground. The air grew cooler, denser, as if the world above was already a memory. When the doors opened, Lauren stepped into a vast hangar lined with silent drones, vehicles, screens alive with satellite feeds. Operators moved like ghosts between stations, efficient, wordless, precise. This, Rachel said quietly, is the real range. No targets, just consequences. Lauren's eyes swept the room. For the first time, she felt both small and infinite, like standing on the edge of something that would either define her or erase her completely. Rachel handed her a data tablet. Your first assignment, observation in Eastern Europe. Civilian cover, diplomatic liaison, no weapons authorization. Lauren looked at her. Another test. Everything's a test, Rachel said. The trick is remembering who you are while you're taking it. Lauren nodded slowly. And who am I now? Rachel's expression softened. Someone who still asks that question. They walked toward the flight bay. Engines hummed somewhere in the distance, echoing off the steel. Lauren glanced down at the tablet again. Beneath the mission details was another handwritten note. She recognized Harper's careful script. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's the sound of choosing not to destroy what you could. She slipped the tablet into her pack, fastening the strap. When the plane doors opened, morning light flooded in, real this time, not filtered through simulation glass. For the first time in months, she felt air that hadn't been conditioned or coded. It smelled of rain and jet fuel and something else, possibility. Rachel extended her hand. Welcome to the shadows, Valkyrie. Lauren took it. Her grip was firm, steady, alive. As the engines roared to life and the plane lifted into the rising dawn, she stared out at the horizon. Clouds rolled beneath like tides, endless and indifferent. Somewhere below, people woke to another ordinary day, unaware of how close the world always came to falling apart. And somewhere above them, in the quiet hum between orders and conscience, a new kind of soldier was being born. Lauren Williams wasn't the recruit who failed basic training anymore. She wasn't even a Marine. She was something rarer, someone who had learned that strength wasn't the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear decide what kind of person you become. The plane tilted east, catching the first light of dawn. She closed her eyes. And for the first time, she didn't dream of tests or failure. She dreamed of balance, of hands steady, heart awake, conscience intact. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did the city look so peaceful when the air was full of tension? Lauren leaned against the railing of a narrow hotel balcony, watching the evening lights of Prague shimmer across the Vltava River. It was her third week in country, and the city had begun to reveal its quiet layers, beauty hiding under fatigue, smiles concealing unease. From this height, everything looked calm, but she knew better. Her cover was simple, cultural liaison for an American security initiative. Harmless, bureaucratic, forgettable, perfect. Her real assignment wasn't in the paperwork. It lived between conversations, hidden behind diplomatic dinners and encrypted calls that came at odd hours. Her first contact, a wiry Czech analyst named Tomas, met her twice a week under the guise of briefings. He was smart, careful, but always looking over his shoulder. Tonight was no different. You understand why this is dangerous, Tomas said, voice low as they sat across from each other in a dim cafe near the old town. These people, they don't care about politics. They care about control. If they know you're here, they will use you. Lauren stirred her coffee, eyes distant. They don't know me. He smiled, a tired sort of smile. They always know more than we think. Outside, rain tapped gently against the window. For a moment, she let the sound fill the space between them. "What did you find?" she asked. He slid a small flash drive across the table. "Shipping manifests, private security companies moving through the Balkans, but one of the names, Apollo Logistics, links back to American defense contracts. Someone's funding both sides of a brewing conflict." Lauren's stomach tightened. The words felt familiar, like the echo of Mendoza. "You're sure?" Tomas nodded, too sure. She pocketed the drive. "If this gets out." He shook his head. "No, if this gets out, it gets buried deeper. That's how this works." They parted quietly, blending into the wet crowd that flowed through the narrow streets. Lauren took the long route back, checking reflections in every window, every shadow that lingered too long. Nothing obvious followed her, but she felt the weight of unseen eyes, always watching. Back in her room, she locked the door, scanned for listening devices, and uploaded the drive through a secure channel. The screen blinked once, twice, then displayed a simple message. "Transmission received, await further instruction." No signature, no acknowledgement, just silence. She sat on the bed, exhaustion creeping through her bones. 3 weeks of pretending to be ordinary. 3 weeks of smiling when she wanted to vanish, of shaking hands with men she knew were laundering war through contracts and currencies. This was what Harper meant by stopping wars before they start. Not heroics, not firefights, just truth buried in whispers. Her phone buzzed once. A single encrypted text, "Do not trust TOMAS." She stared at it. No origin, no timestamp, just the message pulsing faintly on the screen like a heartbeat. The next morning, Tomas didn't show up. Lauren waited an hour at the cafe before checking local feeds. By noon, she found it, an anonymous report, an American tourist and an unidentified man caught in a car fire on the city's outskirts. No survivors. She stared at the article until the words blurred. The photo of the wreck was small, grainy, but she recognized the car, Tomas's. Her hands shook. For a long moment she couldn't breathe. Not because she was shocked, but because somewhere deep down she'd known this was coming. The phone buzzed again. New instructions. Meet contact AT-2100, Charles Bridge, come alone. It wasn't signed, but she recognized the phrasing, Rachel. That night the city glowed under a bruised sky. The river reflected the old stone bridge like a ghost memory. Tourists had thinned out, street performers packed up early, rain threatening again. Lauren stood by the balustrade, coat collar high, scanning faces. "Late night for a liaison officer," a voice said behind her. She turned. Rachel stepped out of the shadows, hands in her pockets, hair damp from drizzle. "Surprised?" Rachel asked. "Relieved," Lauren said, "until you explain why Tomas is dead." Rachel's eyes flicked away. "You weren't supposed to contact him after last week. You said he was vetted." "He was," Rachel said quietly, "until he was." Lauren's pulse quickened. "You think he sold us out?" "I think he got scared. Fear makes people sloppy." Lauren folded her arms. "Or maybe he found something he wasn't supposed to and paid for it." Rachel studied her for a long moment. "You're starting to sound like him." "Maybe he was right," Lauren said. "Maybe the corruption runs deeper than you tell me." Rachel sighed, stepping closer. "Careful, Valkyrie. Suspicion keeps you alive. Paranoia gets you killed." Lauren looked away. The river's surface rippled like mercury. "You told me once the best operations are the ones no one knows happened. But what happens when we become the thing no one should forgive?" Rachel's voice softened. "We carry it, that's the job." She pulled a small envelope from her coat and handed it over. "Your next target, this one matters." Lauren hesitated. "Target or contact?" "Depends on what you find." The envelope was light, almost weightless. She opened it carefully under the bridge's dim light. Inside was a photo of a woman, Early 40s, dark hair, sharp eyes, the kind that looked like they'd seen too much. Below it, Dr. Alina Sokolov, systems analyst, defense contractor liaison. Lauren frowned. She's American. She's also selling network schematics to buyers in Moscow, Rachel said. She's using diplomatic immunity as cover. Evidence. Enough to warrant a conversation, Rachel said. Not enough to make it public, that's why it's you. Lauren slipped the photo into her coat. And if she's innocent? Rachel met her gaze. Then you'll know what to do. They stood in silence, the river whispering beneath them. Finally, Lauren said, "Do you ever think about how easily this line blurs?" Rachel smiled faintly. That line, it's the only thing keeping the world together. And then she was gone, fading into the mist like she'd never been there. 2 days later, Lauren stood outside a conference building near the city's financial district. Dr. Alina Sokolov exited with a group of officials, her smile polite, her manner precise. She looked exactly like the photo, composed, deliberate, careful. Lauren followed her at a distance, through cobbled streets, across a small plaza lined with statues worn smooth by rain. Alina entered a narrow cafe and took a seat in the corner. Alone. Lauren approached. "Mind if I join you?" Alina looked up, mildly curious. "Do I know you?" "Not yet." Something flickered in Alina's eyes, recognition or maybe instinct. "You're not press, you're not diplomatic staff either, so who are you?" "Someone trying to understand why a defense contractor's analyst meets unregistered couriers in back alleys," Lauren said quietly. Alina smiled. "You've been watching." "That's my job." "And do you think I'm a traitor?" "I think you're smarter than to be sloppy." Alina studied her. "And if I told you the buyers are Russians?" Lauren paused. "Then who?" "Private intermediaries," Alina said. "Shell fronts for the same people who fund your program. The same contracts that make sure the wars never really end, just move." Lauren's pulse quickened. "That's not possible." "Oh, it's very possible," Alina said softly. "You just haven't been in long enough to see it." She leaned forward, voice low. "You think Harper's fighting the darkness, but he built it. He's just making sure it stays useful." The words landed like a blow. "You're lying." Alina smiled sadly. "That's what I told myself for years." Lauren stood abruptly. "We're done." Alina's tone stayed calm. "You can walk away, but it won't change what you know now. Once you see the machine, you can't unsee it." Lauren left without another word, the echo of Alina's voice following her out into the rain. That night she sat in her hotel room staring at the photo of Alina, the coded channels glowing faintly on her tablet. Her orders were clear: confirm, neutralize, extract evidence. But Alina's words wouldn't leave her. She looked out the window. Below, the city lights pulsed gently, like a heartbeat she couldn't synchronize with. She activated the secure comm. "Control, this is Valkyrie 1. Target confirmed. Request clarification on chain of command authorization." A pause, then Harper's voice, steady, precise. "Authorization stands. Proceed as instructed." Lauren hesitated. "Sir, she claims the data's internal, that it points back to us." "Speculation," Harper said. "Proceed with the mission." Something in his tone was colder than usual. Less mentor, more machine. "Understood," Lauren said and closed the channel. But she didn't move. For a long time, she sat in silence, watching her reflection in the window, the faint outline of someone caught between purpose and doubt. At midnight, she walked back to the cafe where she'd met Alina. The lights were off, but the back door was unlocked. Inside, Alina sat at a small table, laptop open, calm as if she'd been waiting. "I thought you might come back." Lauren exhaled slowly. "You were right, I can't unsee it." Alina smiled faintly. "Then you're finally awake." Lauren placed the envelope on the table. "What's on the drive you were selling?" Alina turned the laptop toward her. Proof. The Special Projects Division runs covert funding loops through humanitarian fronts, aid, infrastructure, security. They manufacture instability, then sell the cure. It keeps budgets alive. It keeps people like you in motion. Lauren's pulse pounded. Why tell me? Because you're not one of them yet, Alina said softly. Not completely. The screen flickered, showing files marked with the same insignia Lauren had seen on Harper's folders. The same initials, SPD. She closed the laptop. You should leave the country tonight. And you? I'll decide in the morning. When Lauren stepped back into the night, the rain had stopped. The air smelled of stone and ozone, of endings and awakenings. She walked along the bridge again, the city lights mirrored in the river below. For the first time, she understood the silence Harper had talked about. Not peace, not control, but the space between what's right and what's permitted. She pulled out her comm, thumb hovering over the call button. She could report Alina. She could protect her. She could expose everything. Each option carried a cost she couldn't measure yet. The wind shifted, cold against her face. Somewhere behind her, a church bell struck midnight. Lauren took a long breath and whispered to herself, maybe the test never ended. And she kept walking, across the bridge into the darkness, toward whatever truth waited at the end of the silence. Why did dawn always look like confession? The first light spilled over Prague's rooftops, painting the river in pale gold. Lauren sat on the balcony, boots resting on the railing, a mug of untouched coffee cooling beside her. The world below woke softly, vendors rolling carts, trams humming, pigeons tracing lazy circles above the square. To anyone watching, she looked like a woman enjoying an early morning view. But the small drive tucked inside her jacket pocket carried enough secrets to unravel more than one world. She had not slept. Every hour since leaving the cafe replayed in fragments. Alina's calm face, the files flashing on the screen, Harper's voice over the comm. It all looped like a broken reel, truth, loyalty, betrayal, spinning so long it lost shape. Her phone buzzed at 0600 sharp. Incoming call, control. She didn't answer, not yet. Instead, she stared at the light climbing across the skyline and whispered, how much truth can you carry before it breaks you? When she finally pressed accept, Harper's voice came through, cool, deliberate, almost gentle. Valkyrie 1, report. She kept her tone flat. Target confirmed, situation changed. Define changed. She's not selling to foreign buyers. She's exposing internal corruption. Silence stretched long enough for her pulse to find a rhythm of its own. Then Harper said, that's an interpretation, not a fact. She showed me the files. Then she played you. Maybe, Lauren said, or maybe she's the only one not playing. Another pause, you're compromised. I'm awake, she corrected. Harper exhaled quietly, and she could almost hear the weight of disappointment travel through the line. Williams, you're a soldier of silence, not a crusader. We keep the world steady by controlling what others aren't meant to understand. That's the job. Lauren looked at the river, the way light turned the surface into shifting glass. And who controls us? You think too much. You taught me to. The line went dead. 10 minutes later, a message appeared on her encrypted feed. Extraction window 900. Discard evidence. Maintain cover. So it was true. They were pulling her out, cleaning up. And Alina Sokolov would vanish, like Tomas, folded into the unmarked archives where inconvenient people disappeared. Lauren slipped the drive from her jacket and turned it over in her hands. It was small, fragile, like the idea that one person's conscience could change anything. She thought of Rachel's words, suspicion keeps you alive, paranoia gets you killed. Maybe so, but what about silence? What did that kill? At 0840 she left the hotel. The streets were already crowded, umbrellas blooming against the drizzle. She blended in easily, head down, pace steady, just another stranger late for something. Her extraction point was across the bridge, near the embankment where couriers came and went without questions. Halfway there she saw Rachel, standing by the river, coat darkened with rain, hair pulled back, waiting. Lauren slowed. "You came in person." Rachel's smile was small, tired. "You made a mess. Thought you'd need help cleaning it. Or covering it." Rachel's expression didn't change. "Give me the drive." Lauren held it out, then pulled it back slightly. "Before I do, was Tomas part of the plan?" Rachel blinked. "What?" "His death, was that you? Control." Rachel's jaw tightened. "Collateral risk. He contacted the wrong people." "So yes." Rachel's voice lowered. "He would have exposed the program. We couldn't let that happen." Lauren stared at her, the space between them filling with the sound of rain hitting the river. "You talk about stability like it's worth anything, but stability built on lies isn't peace. It's rot." Rachel's eyes softened. "You think the truth cleans rot, it just spreads it faster." "Maybe it should," Lauren said. She took a step closer, the drive still in her hand. "What happens if I walk away with this?" "You wouldn't make it a mile," Rachel said. "Every camera, every satellite, Harper would see you before you reached customs." Lauren nodded slowly. "Then maybe the question isn't if I can escape, it's if I can make him look in the mirror first." Rachel sighed. "You don't understand. We built this to keep people safe." "No," Lauren said softly. "You built it so people never ask why they need to be kept safe." For a moment they stood in silence. Rain fell harder, erasing sound, softening edges. Rachel looked older than Lauren had ever seen her, tired, almost human again. Finally, Rachel whispered, "Don't do this. You'll undo everything." Lauren looked at the drive, then at her reflection in the wet pavement. Maybe some things deserve to be undone. She turned, started walking toward the far end of the bridge. Rachel didn't follow. At 0903, the extraction car waited exactly where the message said it would. Black sedan, tinted windows, engine idling. A man stepped out, umbrella in one hand, earpiece glinting. "Ms. Price," he said, using her civilian alias. "Flight's ready." Lauren handed him her bag but not the drive. "Where to?" "Base command, direct debrief." She looked past him. Across the street, a small cluster of children chased pigeons, laughing, unaware of anything beyond their own mourning. For a moment she envied them. How light their world must be. She opened the car door, then hesitated. "What happens to Dr. Sokolov?" The agent's face didn't move. "Classified." That was answer enough. Lauren slid into the car, the door closing like the last page of a chapter she didn't want to read again. The city blurred past, gray and gold, until they reached the airfield outside town. A small jet waited, engines humming low. As she walked toward it, she saw Harper standing by the ramp, impossibly calm, like a man watching a storm he'd already calculated. "Welcome back," he said. She stopped a few feet away. You knew she was telling the truth. Harper's expression didn't change. Truth is relative. She had proof. "So did we," he said. "The difference is ours keeps the world from burning." Lauren's voice trembled, not with fear but fury held just below the surface. "You trained me to think for myself, to recognize right from wrong." "I trained you to recognize consequence," Harper said. "Right and wrong are luxuries of peace." She looked at him, searching for something, remorse, doubt, anything. There was none, only quiet conviction. "Where, Rachel?" she asked. "Containment," he said. She let personal bias compromise control. Lauren's stomach twisted. "You mean she hesitated?" "I mean she cared," Harper said softly. "That's fatal in our line of work." He gestured toward the plane. "Come, you've proven loyalty through defiance before, but defiance has limits." Lauren didn't move. The wind whipped her coat, carrying the faint scent of fuel and rain. If you erase everything that makes us human, what's left worth protecting? Harper's gaze sharpened. Humanity doesn't protect itself, people like us do. She took a step closer. Then maybe people like us are the problem. For a heartbeat, Harper said nothing. Then slowly he extended his hand. You have one more choice, Williams. Come back and control the storm, or walk away and become part of it. Lauren glanced at the plane, at the open sky beyond. In her pocket, the drive pressed against her palm like a heartbeat. She thought of Tomas's laughter, of Elena's calm defiance, of Rachel's weary eyes. She thought of every lie she'd been told for the sake of peace. And she smiled, a small, tired smile. You said I passed because I disobeyed. Harper's hand stayed outstretched. This isn't disobedience, it's suicide. Maybe, she said, or maybe it's just finally being honest. She stepped back. The guards tensed. Harper didn't flinch. Where will you go? Where the silence ends. She turned, walking toward the far side of the runway. No one followed. Maybe Harper wanted her to go. Maybe he believed she'd be swallowed by the same machine she was trying to expose. Either way, she didn't look back. By the time she reached the chain-link fence, the plane's engines thundered to life. She slipped through an unguarded gap, the rain masking her escape. Within minutes, she was gone, another ghost lost between truths. Hours later, in a crowded train station, she found a locker and placed the drive inside a small envelope. On it, she wrote one line. If peace is built on silence, let this be its echo. She locked it, slid the key into a public mailbox, and walked away. As the train carried her east, the city faded behind mist and distance. She didn't know where she was going, only that she was done living by someone else's definition of control. Outside the window, the landscape rolled by, fields, forests, rivers, all looking perfectly peaceful. But peace, she knew now, was just what you saw when you didn't look too closely. She rested her head against the glass, the vibration humming through her skull like a pulse. In that rhythm, she found something new, not certainty, not closure, but the fragile relief of finally belonging to herself. Somewhere Harper would read the report. Somewhere the machine would keep moving. But for the first time, its silence would not be complete. Lauren smiled faintly, whispering to the glass, "The test's over." And maybe it was. Because sometimes, the bravest act isn't following orders or defying them. Sometimes it's simply refusing to forget who you were before the world taught you how to obey. The train sped on, slicing through the rain, carrying her toward an unknown horizon, toward the sound of her own name, unspoken but still alive. And as dawn broke again, she realized something Harper would never understand. Dignity doesn't live in silence. It lives in the choice to speak, even if no one listens.